Dada Morero has been elected as the Regional Chairperson of the ANC's Greater Johannesburg Region. Morero defeated the current acting chairperson, Eunice Mgcina, by 153 votes to 143. The position of Regional Deputy Chairperson went to Simon Motha. SABC News reporter Zoleka Qodashe standing by with the latest there. Zoleka, a very good morning to you. Thanks for your time. So the former Regional Secretary, Dada Morero, emerging there as the chairperson in the regional conference. Talk to us about the results.
Well, good morning, Criselda. As you correctly mentioned, we are at the Idle Winds Lodge, where the third day of the conference is continuing. And as you correctly mentioned, Dada Morero, former regional secretary, emerging victorious in the hotly contested regional elections between himself and Eunice Mgcina for the position of regional chairperson. Now, as you correctly mentioned, he won by 153 votes compared to his opponent, Eunice Mgcina, who won by 143. And we know that that was a close call, winning by only 10 votes. As you correctly mentioned, he was also someone that also won was Simon Motha, who beat his challenger Simon Mgcina for the deputy chairperson position. Now, Motha received 153 votes compared to his counterpart, who also received 143 votes. Now, Loyiso Masuku was elected deputy secretary, winning against Nomoya Mnisi with 164 votes against 132. The newly elected regional treasurer is Maxwell Nenzemba, who received 166 votes. Now, we know that Mgcina became the face of the Spirit slate after the passing of Mpho Mwerane, who was also a candidate for the chairperson position, and her loss is now a blow for that camp. We know that Justice Ngalonkulu, who contested the position of regional secretary, also lost to Sasabona Mangaye. In the camp, Loyiso Masuku was elected, as I mentioned, with 160 votes, and that makes Loyiso Masuku the only woman now in the top 5 of the REC, which is something I think that we can also expand on, given the ANC's position on women in leadership. But just to speak to us about the results and about how he is feeling this morning, we are joined by the newly elected chairperson of the region, Mr. Dada Morero. Good morning and congratulations.
Good morning, and thank you.
Okay, so just speak to us about some of the results, the developments, and how you're feeling this morning.
No, it's a good morning. We did well as Johannesburg. We had a very peaceful conference, and this morning we intend to conclude on the work on commissions, and we will be concluding conference just before 2 o'clock, so that delegates can go back home and rest, knowing very well that we did the business of conference without compromising any of the business of conference.
Okay, you speak about how peaceful it was, and we know that the provincial chairperson also spoke about this, saying that, and congratulating the region, saying that it is unlike most conferences where they have been marred by violence or many delays. Tell us, now that you have been elected, what are your key priorities?
Well, key to the task is organizational renewal, which conference has already said to us we must place it at the center of the work that we're doing, which means renewing of our structures, rebuilding the structures of the ANC, reconnecting our branches with our own communities, engaging the communities on all issues that affect them, and raising those issues even if we are in the opposition, put pressure to the current government on issues that affect communities, which are service delivery related matters. On matters which are of national character, we will use our ability as the ANC in Johannesburg to connect with national and provincial government to intervene on those issues that are affecting our people. In that way, we think it will help us to reconnect with our communities and regain the confidence of our people to vote the ANC. Key issues that conference has identified after the presentation by Mr. Padi and Tate Padi was around issues of education and training, which we think we want to put it at the center of uplifting our communities and ensuring young people go to school, because we think by them acquiring qualifications and training, we stand a better chance to reverse the poverty levels in our country. So that's what we're going to prioritize as Johannesburg. And secondly, we're also going to prioritize creation of entrepreneurs so that our young people and even those who are over the age of 35 can play an important role in the economy of service delivery. As you know, that the city budget over 10 billion a year, that we think that 10 billion should be allowed to be used by our community so that they can invoice the city. And in that way, we are creating many entrepreneurs who will deal with potholes, who will deal with robots, leaking pipes, and so on and so on. So that is our approach that we're going to take. Thus taking forward the program of the ANC of 2012, which speaks to core production, and we are going to ensure that even the province will bring it on board in helping us to advance on creating entrepreneurs within our communities.
Okay, now you speak about going back to communities, going back to the ground to regain support. We know that recently, in the recent by-elections, the ANC lost some wards to the EFF and the DA. How do you plan on regaining those back?
Well, the ANC has a bigger challenge. We have to look into our selection process of candidates as to what does it mean when we say the community meetings will help us to take a decision on the candidates, and sometimes the community might have resolved that this is the candidate, but the political structures on the basis of certain matters that we analyze, we decide on a different candidate, then the voters vote otherwise. So we've experienced that in the West Rand. In Johannesburg, we did very well. We worked hard to retain Ward 53 with our new councillor, Comrade Nchabeni. So we do know that it's a process to close those gaps, and for the community to love us back, it's going to take a long period. And conference here did commit itself to going out there to ask for a love back from our communities, and the only way that our communities would give us that love back is when we do the right things, and we are going to do the right things, including lobbying national on issues of renewal that we are convinced for the communities to take us serious. We have to aggressively deal with issues of those that have been accused of corruption and wrongdoing, and we must ask them to step aside and allow the ANC to move forward. They will come back if they still wish to be part of this glorious movement, but allow the ANC to grow without leaders who have a cloud on their heads. So that's what we need, and I think we've studied the revolutions of Nicaragua, how the Sandinista movement reclaimed power back after they'd lost it, and one of the key things was to deal with corruption within their ranks, and they dealt with those that were accused of wrongdoing. So we have to create credible leaders for the ANC to regain that confidence back and the love back of the people. And I believe with this collective of do I say Mpandlani or Taki, Blakey, and the two comrades, the deputy chair and the secretary, and together with the deputy secretary and the treasurer, we will drive this thing and the entire collective of the REC to ensure that we reclaim the confidence of the people.
Okay, you speak about corruption and clouds hanging over candidates' heads, right? We know that the now newly elected Deputy Secretary also had a corruption scandal with the SIU investigating PPE, the PPE scandal, and saying that the Gauteng Department of Health had awarded tenders irregularly. Just speak to us about that. And you say that now there's a new way forward, you're paving a new way forward, but this is still something, despite the investigations that have gone on, that still lingers or hovers over the ANC's head, particularly in the region.
Oh, well, that matter was resolved by the Provincial Executive Committee for having subjected the matter to the Integrity Committee of the ANC, which came to a conclusion that Comrade Loyiso is not affected or implicated in any way on the matters of PPE. It could have been others that are close to her, but she was not found to have done any wrong or being implicated in the entire scandal that relates to PPE. And that report was then tabled at the PEC meeting, and the PEC meeting accepted that report and cleared Comrade Loyiso of any form of wrongdoing in relation to PPE scandals. So we think that any other matter that is with the SIU, they will investigate those that are implicated. And as far as our report is, we do know that there was no indication of an implication, but we will call on the law enforcement agencies, especially the IEC, SIU, to conclude the investigation and act on those that have been fingered to have contributed in stealing the resources of our people. And we think the best way is for the ANC to act fast and act swift on these matters and not delay them too long, including our courts and including the SIU. Some of the reports of the SIU have been there for over 5 years. No action has been taken by SIU itself or by the courts, which then makes our people to be disgruntled that in fact there's no use of these people being arrested and being investigated, because at the end the investigation is not concluded and there's no conviction. And in fact we want to see conviction now happening of those that have done wrong. But we're also saying to those that have done wrong, do the ANC a favor. Do the ANC a favor and do the right thing, so that the ANC can grow and regain its former glory. We are an organization that have good values and norms that we believe in, and if you can't subscribe to those values, do the right thing and leave us so that we can build this movement. Whatever it takes to rebuild it, we will do so. We are not obsessed about state power. We are obsessed about rebuilding the ANC and responding to the challenges that our communities are faced with. And that's what conference said when Comrade Chris Vondo delivered the base document. He spoke to us as a liberation movement, cleaning ourselves, doing the right things, and not be obsessed about state power, but we must be more obsessed about service to the people, whether we are in government or we are not in government.
Okay, you speak about corruption. We know in the latest incident, former head of the State Security Agency, Arthur Fraser, has laid corruption charges against the number one in the party, President Cyril Ramaphosa. What is your take as Johannesburg on that?
Well, as the chair of Johannesburg, I might have I'm not sure if my response will be appropriate, but Arthur Fraser would have been the head of the intelligence services in this country before he was redeployed to the correctional services, and my view is he acted incorrectly. In simple terms, he's responsible for the intelligence of this country. So once you are responsible for intelligence matters, you have a responsibility, even if you have personal differences with the head of state, to keep certain matters away from the public eye. And that's his responsibility. And whether he has personal differences, he should remember first and foremost that the country had entrusted him with its secrets. He cannot even think of acting the way he had acted. Whether he's wrong or right is something else. He's not supposed to have spoke about those matters the way he did That's the first part of the response. But the presidency has responded to this matter officially, and they have then in their response said there was no real wrongdoing on the part of the president, and in fact the president had reported that matter to the head of the police and the minister. So I don't think that Fraser was correct, but as the chair of the region, I hold him responsible because I believe he's head of the intelligence services. He can never in any way act in the way that he had acted.
Okay, and finally, going back to the conference, Loisa Masuku has been elected as Deputy Secretary of the region. This makes her the only woman in the top 5 of the REC. Your comment on this, given against the backdrop of the ANC, I know you speak about renewal, but also the position of women in the organization and ascending to leadership positions.
Well, when the whole collective is elected, we'll have a 50-50 split, and that's what the Constitution requires of us to do. So we will have women elected into leadership to lead us. It is not about being elected in the top 5, it's being elected into the collective, and conference believe that these individuals, whether men and women that we have elected, are capable. So at times it will be one woman, at times it could have been one man elected in that collective, which was a possibility. If you think about this way, had I lost, the chairperson would have been a woman, the deputy secretary would have been a woman. So it does happen that you can have more women in the top 5 than men. So it's what conference decides on capacity and capabilities that they want to see in that leadership that's being elected. And remember, the ANC believes in the principle of non-racialism, non-sexism, which means we look at the skills as opposed to looking at the gender of an individual. But we do encourage women participation. And in fact, you'll be surprised that more than half of the delegates here are actually women.
Okay, and finally, it's the final day of conference. What are we expecting today? We know that there's going to be the nomination and election of additional members. Talk to us about that.
Yes, we will have commissions starting immediately, and we will then take nominations for additional members, and voting will happen, and commissions will then come back, and we will then do conference declaration. We don't think we'll have sufficient time for commissions to report back, but the scribers in the commissions will then collate the information and develop that into resolutions of conference. Then they will be reflected in the declaration of conference, and we think by 2 o'clock conference would have concluded its business, including the results being announced around that time, to allow delegates to go home and relax. Some of them are going to work tomorrow, so they need some few hours to rest and go back to work fresh tomorrow. Including the media that has not been able to sleep, they can leave early and go and rest. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Griselda. That is the newly elected Chairperson of the region of the Greater Johannesburg Region. Just speaking to us about what we are supposed to expect today. Also highlighting some key issues and key priorities as he approaches his seat as Chairperson in the region.